All right, welcome everyone. Tonight we are doing our free workshop on the inner child work. And I really find this helpful. But as I was thinking about it, I also wanted to explain I don't do it all the time with people. It's something that I've probably done inner child work, a handful of times, but even just those times doing it, I've been able to resource and like draw back on my inner child when I'm not in a meditation or being guided by someone. So it can be really helpful to have, some kind of guided meditation or someone walking you through it to make that connection with the inner child. And but it's not necessarily something I do with every single person every single time. As you may know, I coach with a lot of people who have chronic pain, chronic disease. And so inner child work can be really, really helpful for oftentimes that inner child is found in that area that they have pain. So what I usually do, if you look at the tuning into the body workshop, just kind of taking people into their body. We can do a lot of coaching at the somatic level, which I think is so awesome. If you've only done therapy where you're talking or just coaching where you're talking, that's all up here in the cognitive mind. So when we start to involve the body, there can be emotions, what they call trauma is stored emotions in the body that were never expressed. And you can find that inner child there sometimes in those areas where, people have their hip pain or their back pain, or sometimes it's more where they have emotions. So maybe they're feeling really angry, and that's usually what I'll do is we'll do our normal kind of tuning into the body. Like I said, it's always different with each person, even from day to day could be different. But if they start to have some kind of memory, I'll often ask them, does this kind of remind you of a feeling that you had when you were younger? Maybe it's a very young child. So for some people, it's like a 2 or 3 year old. For some people, they have a memory of middle school when they were, teased or something. And that's the inner child that comes up. Often there's, an inner child around the high school age or middle school age. I've worked with a lot of physicians. And so sometimes their inner child is in med school when they were just trying so hard and, just burning themselves out, but just feeling like they had to be perfect. And really your inner child could even be from last week, right? It could be just any version of your past self. And seeing myself through this inner child lens for me has brought so much compassion. So when I started getting into self-help stuff, I got really into life coaching, which is very cognitive. And the kind of the attitude I had was like, great. Now that I know that my thoughts are causing my emotions and really everything in my life, my results, I can just change my thoughts and be happy about everything. And so I didn't really fully understand the nuances of feeling all of these different emotions, and that it's good to feel them, and that you might have some kind of inner rage, like a child throwing a tantrum, and you're not supposed to just repress that and ignore that. If you do that chronically, that can lead to tension in your body. So as you're thinking of the inner child concept, I would think of it as, the way I like to think of it is, your nervous system is developing when you're a child. So the definition of trauma is more than what the nervous system can handle. So it might be, there could be an incident that is traumatic to someone because it was more than they had tools for. It was more than they knew how to cope with, and it wasn't ever processed with them. And then someone could have the same type of event happen and it not be a traumatic event, as in stored in their body, because either their nervous system was more resilient, they had coping skills, or they were able to process it with someone. So it wasn't just repressed and basically becoming, I know the wording of repressed emotions might sound a little weird, but the way I think about it is your inner child, or when you were a child, I should say, right? Your young self. At the nervous system level, there are some compensations you can do to survive: fight or flight, freeze or fawn. Your nervous system picks what's best for you, what it feels like is best for you at this primitive level to survive. So for me, for example, I did not have any capital T kind of trauma like abuse or death or anything that was like a capital T trauma, but I was raised in a religious home where I internalized really wanting to be perfect, wanting to be good. And then just kind of a general fear all the time of like, I think I might be bad. Like, what if I'm doing something wrong? What would other people think? Um, so, so yeah, for me, getting in touch with that inner child, now I'm able to, when I have sensations in my body, I can often relate that to some sense, some early fear that I might have had of, I'm not perfect enough. And so I go into flight. And or maybe you want people to like you, so you're a people pleaser, and that's the nervous system state of fawn. So if that's interesting to you, this kind of discussion about the nervous system, about how we store trauma, it sometimes sounds a little airy fairy, but really they're finding scientifically the nervous system has basically memories. And so if something comes up where, for me, I think that, what would people think? One of my nervous system responses is to go into people pleasing or to go into perfectionism and, try to be this fake person so that people will like me. So I feel that in my body. For me, I have digestive symptoms. And so I have gotten to know that when I have that, grinding pain in my stomach, that clenching, then checking in with like, what survival states am I going into? Like, what did that trigger, right? Like, what did that, Eckhart Tolle says it's like something that hit your stuff. So as we go through life, we are going to have things that hit our stuff. That's normal, right? Like it's going to happen, just being a human on the earth. And I look at it, now that I know this inner child perspective, I look at it as an opportunity to kind of revise the old program that's there. Like I have this programming from my nervous system developing, and then I get the chance, when I can tell that I'm triggered, I get the chance to look at what is really going on in reality, assess, is there a danger, right? Is there a tiger chasing me? Never has there been. Like, I very rarely, if ever, been in a survival threat, but my nervous system started being really hyper vigilant at a young age because I was always assessing the environment and like, am I safe? Am I doing the right thing? Are people going to like me? So that's how I've viewed inner child work. And what I was going to say, if you're interested in the nervous system stuff, I do offer some modules, some videos that I've created about the nervous system so that you can get a little more in depth with understanding the survival responses, how it affects your body, how to regulate your nervous system, so that when you're starting to feel, your neck tighten up, or for me, my stomach clenching, I know, okay, that's my body responding in this primitive way. My nervous system determined I was dangerous because I read an email where, someone disagreed with my opinion. And instead of, reacting from this nervous system response, I want to actually, think about it and assess what's going on and have a more compassionate perspective for myself when I do have those emotions, because I'm not thinking like, oh, why do I keep thinking this? I should know better. Why do I keep getting upset when I have an email like that or something? I'm so much more compassionate when I can connect with that inner scared version of myself. So that's a little bit about inner child work. And yeah, Rachel says she can relate to the people pleasing and perfectionism. Yeah, it's actually, if you didn't know, many, many people with chronic pain, it's very common for them to relate to being perfectionists, people pleasers, wanting to be seen as good, high achievers, a high sense of duty. And those are survival responses. I had no idea. I'm like, I think I've lived in fawn since I was like 3 or 4. And so that's, all of my life kind of being in this hypervigilant state and basically blocking off part of myself in order to, try to please other people or fit in, which, most of the time there were these like, who are these like people in air quotes, right? Like it wasn't like specific people I was trying to impress. It was just like someone somewhere might not like that. So I'll just, cut off that part of myself that wants to express that. So yeah, no idea before now that it was a survival response. Yeah. So if you're curious about that, watch those videos, those nervous system videos. It's fascinating. And like I said, for me, it just brought so much compassion. So rather than thinking like, these are personality flaws or like, why can't I just change? I'm like, oh my gosh, of course, my nervous system is trying its best to protect me. And if I work with it, I'm going to have such a different experience in life than if I'm going around trying to avoid things, trying to control other people to, provide the environment that I can be in. When you learn to regulate your nervous system, it opens up so much. So, all right. So I wanted to just ask then if any people here want to share if they've either one, like had some inner child work that they've done and experiences, or if two, if they're like really curious about this, but it's all kind of new, but they're like wanting to try it out. So there are a few people on that if you want to just unmute or raise your hand so we can have it like a little interactive. Yes, Shelby says, I love inner child work. Yeah, so powerful. Rebecca says, some experience. Yeah. Is there anyone that is curious, well, wants to share? Hey, Shelby, did you want to share anything about like, maybe an experience for you that was powerful or like how it's helped you? Because I'm sure you've done this and she's a coach that helps other people with this too.
Yeah, well, and I'm in the middle of something, so I'm like, I could probably use some inner child work
Oh,
too.
okay. Well, good for you for, waving at me. Because,
Yeah.
um, if you're willing and, other people want to just watch and listen and even do the exercise along, I think we'll probably have time to work with a couple of people and actually demo it. And then at the end, I just have like an exercise that you can work on your own that I'll tell you about that you can, do the inner child work and really start to communicate with your inner child more and more, become more intuitive with that. Okay, so yeah, let's do it. And then if you were like about to raise your hand, just get ready because I think we'll, have time to do yours too. So thanks for volunteering though, because not everyone wants to volunteer, right? So that would be a boring workshop if it was just me talking. So thank you. I shouldn't say that. It would be amazing, but I like to, hear you guys' voices too.
Yeah. I always love to hear from you. I always come away learning something amazing from you.
Oh, well, likewise. I feel like I love that we, do the same thing and like, you have such great insights and I'm always like happy to see your smiling face on these calls. All right. So, yeah, let's do your inner child work. So for those of you who want to do this along, as long as you're not like driving, you can do this. It would probably be nice if you had a little quiet place or if you could sit down somewhere or lay down. So you want to just be as comfortable as possible. So as I'm describing the things to Shelby, just imagine them for yourself. And you might actually be surprised how much you can get from listening to the process, someone else doing it, and then just like reflecting it back inwards to yourself. Okay. So go ahead and get comfortable wherever you are, seated or laying down. You can lay back in your chair, or you can uncross your legs if that feels good. You can let your eyes soften, or actually just close your eyes. And I do prefer when people close their eyes, there's less visual stimulation. But also know, when we're working with the nervous system at all, if something feels really forced, or you ever feel trapped, or you just, you're like, I don't want to breathe that way, or I don't want to close my eyes, you're always welcome to use these as suggestions. But if you're able to, practice just closing your eyes, tuning into the body, and it will be a little less distracting than if you keep opening them. So go ahead and notice how your body's feeling on the surface. You might even notice you're able to release some of the muscle tension that has been, just kind of guarding and holding. And you notice that since there's this surface beneath you, you can relax into it. Again, these suggestions don't have to be forceful. And we want to just work with the nervous system. So as you start, you can notice the breath. Again, we're just observing. It's like you're laying on your back, watching clouds in the sky. You're not going in, trying to change at this point. You're just watching the breath, noticing how much you're expanding your lungs, noticing where you feel your breath, if it feels warm or cool. If you like, you can take some deeper breaths. Maybe that would feel good to expand a little more when you inhale, and take a long, slow exhale. So if that feels good to you, you can do that. And then just start by scanning the body, just noticing the different places of your body. You could start at the head, noticing your face and jaw and neck and shoulders, just scanning through all the way to your toes, noticing different parts of your body that get your attention. And for you, Shelby, what is the area that gets your attention the most as you scan through the body?
Definitely my jaw and on like the left side of my tongue.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, the left side of the tongue and the jaw. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. So as you tune into that area, just start focusing your attention just to that one spot of the body. And then if it does move, like you start really feeling another sensation somewhere, just let me know and we can always move. So, but just start focusing in wherever you have that most sensation right now. For you, the jaw and the left side of your tongue. And as you observe that with your mind's eye, as you imagine that space, can you tell me how big of an area that is taking up?
It's it feels really big.
Yeah.
Um,
Does it have
yeah,
some kind of shape you could describe, or how could you
it
describe?
it almost feels like kind of like a balloon that's just like blowing up. Like it feels like the balloon that where as you blow it up, like the outside part of it is just getting like tighter and tighter as it's
Okay.
like stretched out.
Yeah. Okay. So as you're noticing it, is it like a fast speed? Is it a slow speed that it's moving? Is it
I'd
uh,
say it's pretty slow.
okay? Okay. And what is the sensation that you're feeling in that area? How would you describe it?
It's like kind of like a tingling. And it is moving, which is interesting. Like where it's moving, it hasn't moved there before. Like
Oh,
it's moving like up towards like the corner of my outer eye.
okay. Yeah. Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
You could even say to that area, and it's your I see you, like I
Yeah,
see you there.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I don't know why that strikes me as funny, because, the pun, but that's, just a technique for you following along, that you can just notice that space with less of a story, without judgment. You're just like, I see you. And as you're now paying attention to that area, Shelby, can you describe that to me? How it feels, the shape?
It just it just feels like a creeping, like it's just like creeping along,
Mm-hmm.
like where it felt like it was like getting really tense is now kind of like spreading itself, like kind of thinner.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just not as sharp. It's more dull, and like where it was tingling, it kind of felt like more like pinpricks.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's just it's just like I said, it's just kind of creeping
Mm-hmm.
around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you're just like, you're watching it like you would watch the weather change or like you would watch a fireworks show. We're just kind of observing, not judging, and being curious about it. Does it have any color as you imagine it? Do you imagine a color to it?
um I think maybe pink.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So just, yeah, go with whatever your mind brings up, and
Yeah.
no wrong answers. So can you get any sense of, oh, you said the texture, is this area also that texture of like a balloon? I was going to ask if the texture, some people say
Yeah.
metal or rock or stone or well, or rope or something.
Yeah, I think the texture is it doesn't feel like plastic.
Okay, interesting. What would you?
Go tell dad. Sorry. 5-year-old's time just ran up.
Yeah, they're real. There's the
Um
inner
the,
child
the,
and
the true
the
I was just gonna
real
say the
life
true
child.
inner child right next to me. Um I think the texture is kind of spongy.
Interesting. Is it like a dry sponge or is it kind of like a
Yeah,
soft
more
sponge?
wet. Yeah, it's like
Uh-huh.
a more wet sponge.
It's like pink,
Like, and kind of warm.
warm, spongy, slowly moving, kind of creeping.
Yeah, it just kind of is like almost feels like it's just kind of exploring, just trying to kind of
Mm.
look around.
Yeah, just lurking around. And if you were to notice that sensation, like what if it had some kind of emotion? Does it feel like it has some emotion to you, some maybe meaning for being there, some purpose?
I feel like it does. And I feel like it's like right on the edge. I think it's sadness.
Mm. Yeah, okay, interesting. Let's see if any memories come up to you that seem to be like related to this sensation, or they just come to your mind. It could be from young childhood or more teenage years. But and if not, again, we're not like trying to like force anything and create a memory, but just kind of just like open to like, does my subconscious want to share something with me here?
I think I can't it's not necessarily like a one memory time, but just kind of a time of feeling powerless as a child.
Mm. Yeah, I was actually just even watching something about inner child stuff, and they said it could be pre-verbal. So you could have been like
Mhm.
an infant that, wasn't getting comforted and didn't really have any other coping skills, and, developing
Yeah,
this way to try to calm the nervous system by tightening up against it.
yeah, and one thing, oh, I think I heard you saying something about that to somebody earlier.
Ah, yeah.
And but I think too, like growing up, like my parents fought a ton and I was the oldest.
Hmm.
And so like I had a huge story of just like if I was just, acted a little better, did a little bit
Hmm.
more, like I could distract them from like fighting with each other.
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad you said that. That is one thing I wanted to mention is these like little children, if you observe them, they do tend to blame things on themselves and think it's their fault. And if they could just act differently, then, you know, they wouldn't have to live in fear because of the parents fighting or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad you mentioned that sense of like, it's probably my fault, or if I could do something better. I could
Yeah.
prevent this. I could make my parents happy. Oh,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like I said, I can't think of like a specific time, but I mean, that's something that's just like
Hmm.
they're still together today and they still do the same stuff. So
Yeah.
it feels very like I feel like I said, very powerless in that
Mhm.
I didn't like the contention. I didn't like the discord. Like my
Mhm.
husband and I very rarely are at odds with each other. Like we
Mhm.
communicate a lot.
Mhm.
Um, just because I just, like I said, I think I felt so powerless as a younger version. There was nothing that I could do or say
Yeah.
that could stop the contention from happening.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes so much sense. And there's so much about those emotions of fear
Mm-hmm.
being, those helpless, powerless ones being, more the kind of ones that we subconsciously, look out for then in the future, right? So anything that might remind us of those situations, we're like, oh, I don't want it to be like this. So we go into those survival states. Yeah. So maybe just describe to me again that area. Is it the same? Is it by the eye? Has it
Yeah,
moved?
it's just like underneath my eye, like I like when I had pinpointed like that emotion of sadness, like
Mhm.
definitely because I was like I felt like I was on the verge of tears, but
Mm,
not having anything that I really thought I was sad about.
yeah.
Um, and
Okay.
then like I still like a lot of the sensation like around the back of my jaw
Hmm.
just kind of migrated away. There's like still some just right at the lower jaw like gum line.
Hmm.
Now there isn't.
Oh, now there isn't. Yeah. That's what's fun. We just get to go with whatever comes up and
Whatever it wants to
not
do.
have an agenda.
Yeah. And then like on the like by the tongue, like that lower I'm just watching it. I'm just watching it. So
Yeah.
funny. Because like
Great.
the tongue one, I could start to feel like some comfort in it. Like
Oh.
it like just not and like still have a sensation, but it not be unpleasurable anymore. Like
Hmm. Yeah. You're,
interesting.
that is very cool. And Shelby's kind of a pro of like relaxing into you're like, no, but you've had
He taught me.
experience.
He taught me.
But we've both been practicing lots of practice of like when we have these sensations being so curious and noticing how they can sometimes just even change and go away as quickly as they come. So that practice of just observing and being, not surprised when it just kind of changes and moves, that may happen more as you practice more and more because, the more you have a story about something, the less you can be neutral about it. But when you're like, oh, that's interesting, it just moved up to this new place, very good chance you can be neutral and just watch it. So just
Yeah.
noticing the more you do that, the quicker it can go away.
Yeah. And I think I just the past couple of days, like I went to a doctor's appointment this morning and I could really see myself like in such freeze because I was
Mm.
like so scared of what she was going to say or that she wasn't going to listen to me and
Mhm.
it's like I think that's like also the powerless. I think that's kind of
Yes.
like the connection.
Yes. So let's lean into that, like feeling powerless, really, imagining a time that you, maybe as a child, that you remember feeling powerless, or just even earlier today. Where else do you feel that in your body? What does that powerless feeling bring up?
I feel that like more the pressure on my chest, that powerlessness.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels yeah, I'm like it feels scary. Like that's not an emotion that I practiced like
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
relaxing into. That's a new one.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, we can do it together for sure. So noticing that emotion, calling it up on purpose, feeling it, and just noticing the sensations it brings up in your body. It's this heaviness on your chest, pressure. Did you say heaviness? Anyway,
Yeah, I did.
yeah, okay. All of a sudden I was like, which word was it exactly? Anyway, yeah. So what else could
Or-
you, it feels powerless. And, again, not to like keep asking the same question, but sometimes again, just revisiting, like, does it bring up a memory of an age, that now that we're focusing on the chest, that there might be a younger version that felt that strongly, that powerlessness.
I keep getting brought up to, sorry. I'm like, not when I was like necessarily a child, but when I was 31.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I'm
Great.
like that. Over the past few months, like I think I told you a little bit about like internal family systems. They talk about how
Yeah.
sometimes you feel like you get stuck at an age, and I keep finding myself being like, I'm 31. I'm like, no, I'm 39.
Yeah.
Like just kind of like I'm stuck there. And that's when I was diagnosed with kidney failure.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. So that was really a traumatic year, if we want to
Yeah.
talk about trauma. Like,
Yes,
yeah.
yes, it was. And I just,
Very
like I
traumatic.
said, just felt so powerless that
Yeah.
year.
Yeah. So this is a great example where it doesn't have to be a 2-year-old inner child. It could be from last week or a few years ago. So let's go to her. So you're at this point, if you can imagine that inner child version of yourself. So for you, you were like a young mom and in Japan, right? And
I was in Florida at that
oh,
time,
you're in
but yeah,
Florida, but
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
I'd already been to Japan.
Had been to
Yeah.
Japan. Okay, yeah. So I knew there was like, you know, not being near family and not knowing, like, I think your husband was gone a lot, right?
Yeah.
Military and yeah. So any of
Yeah,
those
he
kind of
was
things.
in Japan. So good job.
He
Good
was in
remembering.
Japan,
He was in
right?
Japan.
Right. Like how, yeah, like calling up that version of yourself and just like bathing her in this understanding of like, that was so hard, right? Like that was a really stressful time. Of course, that was something you never want to go through again. Yeah. Just having that compassion for her. You can see that she was doing the best she could with the tools that she had at the time, right? She didn't have the resources that you have now. And if you were a child, in your version, if you're doing this along and you're imagining a young child, you just didn't have resources to calm yourself, to know it was going to be okay, to express things, to ask for help, maybe. So, as you're imagining her, you could imagine, maybe she's in a room with you. She could be sitting. You could maybe sit next to her. You could give her a hug. And I'll just say, if you're doing this along, and I'll give you a chance to kind of imagine this, sometimes the inner child just wants to throw things around and doesn't want to be talked to. And so just hold that space with what's ever coming up with your inner child or, your inner version of yourself. And as you see her, Shelby, how does that go for you?
Yeah. After I got diagnosis, I just remember looking at the paper thinking, I hope this is some really old person that they mixed me up that already knows that they're sick and this is not me.
Yeah.
And I couldn't stop crying.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember sitting in a chair next to my bed and just like, I just had a box of tissues and I just was going through tissue after tissue.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I took a picture of it because I'm like, I'm going to send this to the insurance company and show them like all this, like how much I cried over their stupid mistake.
Wow. Yeah.
Because I was mad
Yeah.
and I was so lonely.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just like, I haven't thought about that memory this way before about going and comforting her.
Yeah. It makes so much sense that she felt alone. She felt confused. She didn't even believe it. She was just completely in like denial. And, um, you know, probably those stages of grief come to mind, right? With the first one's like denial and, right? Like that was such an emotional thing to go through basically by yourself. So you could ask your inner child what she would have liked, what she would have needed, what she would have wanted to feel.
I think she just wanted to feel held.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think she would have been like, yeah, we can do this. We can get through this. But I want to feel held. I want to feel connected.
Yeah.
I want to feel loved through this process.
Yeah. Yeah. Imagine, yeah, how great it would be if your self right now, as you're imagining this, could have, gone back with that knowledge of like, this is going to be okay. There are going to be so many things you learn. This path is the path you're on for a reason, or you don't have to um you don't have to say anything you don't believe, right? If it doesn't feel right to say this happened for a reason, but some of those things might actually start to feel true as you're a little further in your healing journey, and you can see how that drastic life change actually put you on such a different path that you might have never been on and gotten those blessings from. So imagining now that you're that current self that knows that she's going to make it. She knows, that she's going to be okay. And you can give her that comfort. So you can imagine actually hugging her. You can put your own hands on your sides of your arms, or you could put one hand, your right hand, you could put close to your heart on your ribs, and the other hand over your other arm, and just feel that nice comforting that you can do by hugging yourself, maybe rocking side to side, just telling that version of yourself it's okay, telling her you're going to get through this. How does that go for you?
I love it.
Yeah. 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 It's sometimes just that I tell myself so often, like, you're safe, because that inner child just feels so scared, so helpless, so
Out of
unsure,
control.
out of control. Yeah. And then when you're starting to feel that way, it's easy for your brain to look for evidence everywhere and find where that's true. Like, you don't have control of this. You don't have control of this. So we want to just, give that inner child what she needs. um, Maybe there's something soothing that your inner child wants. Maybe you imagine going out to ice cream, or you imagine watching a movie together. I had one client that was like, we put in this VHS tape, and like, you're in your 20s, how do you know what a VHS tape is? But he remembered a VHS tape. And so just whatever comes up, again, it could even be different from time to time when you do it, but just being there and asking, like, what can I do to soothe you? How can I help you? And then in your imagination doing that thing.
Yeah, we were living at the beach at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just imagine like just walking down the beach, like hand in hand.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that. Yeah. And as you're imagining things, it's always so interesting and so cool to know that the more you imagine things with your senses, so you're imagining like the warm breeze on your face and the smell of the ocean and the sound of the waves. And you can even imagine the feeling that you would feel, and really feeling, the gratitude or the connection or the love that actually, trains our brain. Our brain doesn't really know what's going on in reality. So the more we imagine things with powerful emotions and with our senses, our brain can believe that's, safe, that we can be in this safe place. And that's ultimately what we want, is to feel this sense of safety so that we can then think with our prefrontal cortex again and get out of survival states and let our body heal and repair. So what I like to do now is imagine a future version of yourself. So yourself in 5 years from now. So imagine that she has, worked through whatever the fears are, or she's in this different place. It's really your own movie that you're making up. So imagine the coolest version that you can of yourself in 5 years. And try and imagine her coming into the picture. Can you imagine that, Shelby? Your future self?
Yeah. Yeah. I can.
Yeah. And is there a different like knowledge or emotion that she's bringing?
Like, I want to say power, but I don't think that's it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like some version of grounded or
Mm-hmm.
sure,
Yeah.
or just its willingness.
Willingness. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Willingness. And when you're saying grounded and sure, I was thinking of like trust. That's
Yeah.
what I like too. But yeah,
Mhm.
that willingness, like she's willing to experience all the things. Yeah. Willingness. Tell me more about the willingness.
Yeah, that's really what I'm thinking about, is just being
Yeah.
willing to experience it all, even the powerlessness, because it's like
Yeah.
that's when it loses its power, is like
Yeah.
when there's just not the resistance against it. She's willing.
Yeah, exactly. She's willing to
And,
feel all the things, and then those things don't come up as much because she's not resisting them. Yeah.
right, right. And she just, like, I feel like that's just like a baby muscle that I'm been
Yeah.
practicing, and I, like, she's just developed that muscle so much. It's
Yeah.
second nature now, where now I like have to remind myself.
Yeah.
It's just an everyday practice for her.
Yeah. Yeah. She's like grown that capacity to like experience things and tolerate things. Her window of tolerance is greater. So she's not scared of having those feelings and feeling the helplessness. And
Mm-hmm.
she probably knows that she has ways to ask for help and other resources, and she doesn't have to do things alone, and she is good at figuring things out. And yeah.
Yeah, and like really creative, really, really collaborative.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So does
And
she?
like not so dependent.
Yeah.
Um, like not independent, but just like knows herself, but
Mm-hmm.
also is like calling in all of, like you said, the support, all of the resources.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like not dependent on people needing to change for her to have a certain emotion, but
Mm-hmm.
also when she does have those emotions, she doesn't have to, do it on her own.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So if she had some words of advice for you, what would she tell you right now?
It's safe to grow.
Mm, how does that feel in your body?
Like lit up. Like it feels,
Yeah.
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 Oh, I love that description. Lit up. Yeah. Yeah. Do you imagine like an actual like light or color or
Yeah.
sensation? Tell me more about it.
it feels like just like kind of like a little ball of light that just
Mm-hmm.
like a fountain of light that comes up.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds beautiful.
Cause yeah, because it's just like I can feel like the expansion that wants to be there, but then there's like the scared of
Yeah.
the cost of the expansion.
Yeah.
But the cost is just being willing. Like that's the cost.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. The resistance to change is that biggest like hurdle to it, probably. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And just having that future perspective of like, I have these opportunities in my life and I see how I've overcome them before. And, you know, that kind of, it's like you're zooming out and you can see the whole picture. And then when you bring it back to yourself now, you have that, something to to hold on to that you could trust or feel hopeful about or feel willing to.
Yeah. I don't know if you ever heard Mary Morrissey, but she tells about like this quote from the Talmud where it talks
Mhm.
about how like next to every blade of grass is an angel that's kneeling beside it and whispering, grow, grow.
Yeah.
And I think about that because it's just like, okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's okay
Those,
to grow.
yeah, those survival responses are like, no, it's scary. Go back to the cave. You'll never survive. Just stay where you are, miserable and not growing. But right. At
Totally,
least then we
totally,
know what to expect.
totally.
Yeah. Oh, so good. Thank you so much for being willing. That was so
Thank you.
great. Awesome. All right. Were there any people that want to comment or have questions? That actually did end up taking a longer time than I thought, but hopefully that was something that you're able to apply to yourselves too. But we definitely have at least 5 more minutes before I want to tell you about that last little technique you can use. So anyone else want to comment? You can just go ahead and unmute, or you can raise your hand. But I won't call on you, so don't worry. But if you'd like to contribute, I'd love to hear from you guys too. Okay, well, maybe you just got what you needed out of hearing Shelby. And so I will let you know about what I keep talking about, the little strategy or the little activity you can do to tap into your inner child. Oh, and Sue says that was very powerful. Thank you, Shelby. Yes, thank you. And so what I think of with this is times that I want to tap into my intuition. And I like to think of the nervous system states always with everything. And so I think of the times that we're in survival mode, we are not tapped into our intuition. We are, living with our primal brain, our amygdala, and we're just like seeing danger everywhere. And then when we are in that calm, parasympathetic calm state, that's where we're not trying to control everything around us. We feel safe, we feel relaxed, and we can tap into our intuition. But that does take practice because most of us are not used to living in the parasympathetic calm state. It can start to even feel dangerous when we're like, okay, I'm sitting around and I'm relaxing, shouldn't I be doing something, and aren't people going to get mad? And you know what I mean, like that's how I was. So one way that can help is by drawing on your inner child to try to get some ideas for your intuition, or get, kind of deep down subconscious what you think. So one way that you can do is take a notebook and open it to the two sides of the pages, like a spiral notebook. And then you're going to use your non-dominant hand. So, well, you'll use both hands. So with your dominant hand, you write the question. So I might say, what sounds like a fun way to grow my business, And then with my non-dominant hand, I'm going to just listen for any kind of whatever comes to my hand and write it, or my head, and write it with my left hand. So using your non-dominant hand kind of slows things down. It gets the other side of your brain working, and it can be a really fascinating thing to just open yourself up to, like, what kind of inspiration do I get? Don't freak out if you're like, oh, I'm supposed to get this real, big life-changing information and download or anything. It's more like your inner child will probably say things like play, have fun. Like, it's usually more like a child would speak, right? It's not going to be like, go to your funnel and do the third, you know what I mean? It's going to be like, have a party, you know what I mean? Like, invite your friends, right? And that's like actually why I'm doing these workshops. Cause I'm like, I want to have I want it to be more like a fun thing. And that's how I'm trying to approach my business in every area, is like, what is fun for my inner child, and actually trusting that the more I lean into my intuition, the better it will be. Sometimes reels, I just post them at a certain time and one goes viral or something. And I just attribute that to just kind of that intuition and not being real scheduled. And, you can do what works for you, but I've really been exploring letting my inner child and my intuition guide me. And, again, it's a practice, right? It doesn't feel comfortable all at once. But for me, it's just been so eye-opening, so fun. I think it's, the example of how I want to, show people, like, you can live more by your intuition, you can live more in the calm state. And the more you're, drawing on that, it's just basically, the way I think of it is, it's just attractive to the right people. You're like a magnet, right? So you might not be growing a business, you might not care about that, but in your relationships with people, when you're in survival states, you're like, pardon the word, but you're repulsive, right? Like, when you're in fear and you're in neediness, there's this, if you think of like vibrationally or like a magnet, it's like a kind of repulsive state. It's especially like if someone is constantly angry or someone's constantly negative, you can actually feel that when you leave them. You're like, I just feel like I got drained, like they're taking energy to stay in that survival state. So they're either taking that energy from the people around them, or they're taking that energy from their own bodies. So the more we get into that parasympathetic calm state, which is even just neutrality, or getting into more like happiness and joy and love, those kind of emotions are attractive to people. So it literally is helping your connection with, your relationships or your children or your work or whatever. I think there really is a tangible result for regulating your nervous system, getting to that calm state more and more, because that is the state where you can actually connect to people without just being in your head and what are they thinking of me? You actually are listening to them, right? You're more intuitive, more creative, you're better able to learn, you're better able to communicate. So anyway, that's just a little plug for regulating your nervous system, doing this somatic work, and tuning into your inner child when it feels right to you. And then let's see, there's a little comment that I missed. Exactly how I feel every time I'm really sitting and relaxing, right? I used to like literally at night to go to sleep, I used to make lists of what I would do the next day, like to relax, right? I'm like, that's how high strung I was all the time. And it's very easy if you're a woman or a mom, or you're just, a nice person. Dr. Schubiner always says this happens to the nicest people, right? The healthy aggression workshop, I was just thinking about it because I'm like, you're not going to see people that are not repressing their anger very much with chronic pain, because they're expressing their anger. Like, they're kind of jerks and people don't like them for other reasons or whatever, but they're not repressing those emotions, and they are less likely actually to have chronic pain than the really super nice people. So fascinating. All right, you guys, any last questions, comments?
This was amazing. Thank you.
Oh, thanks so much. Oh, you made it all the way through, coming from Australia.
I have made
Very
it the whole way
cool.
through. I have had a couple of work interruptions, so sorry.
Okay. Well, the beginning and the end, at least.
Yeah, I've been through in most of
Okay.
it. But, yeah, I'll watch the replay again as well. Because,
Yeah.
thanks, Shelby, that was amazing. Like, yeah, to what I saw was just, yeah, it really hit a lot too about how important it is to connect with your inner child. So, yeah. Thank you. And thanks,
Good.
Shelby, for being so open with everyone. That was amazing.
Yes, that was so amazing. Yes, thank you. And if some of you are like, oh, I really wanted a chance to do that, and some of you I haven't met before, and I do offer a free 60-minute consult where, we can do some of the somatic work, we can do some inner child work. So, it's always great to hear someone else do it and apply it to yourself. But also, if you were kind of hoping for that one-on-one chance, you can always look, just everywhere. Just email me if you don't find a place, but like in my Instagram or wherever, there's always a place to book a consult, and you can take it a little deeper with me one-on-one. And thank you. Oh, yes.
Where can we find those modules you were saying?
Oh, yeah. Where do you usually find my stuff? Are you on Instagram or Facebook or email? Okay. Oh my gosh. Yes. Did you ask about that this morning? I wrote down nervous system modules, and I'm going to send it in my next email, and then I didn't. I will send a link. Thank you for the reminder. I'll send a link in my next email with the nervous system modules. And I will just say, like, if you start to get overwhelmed, if you're watching it and you're already kind of thinking of a lot of stuff, just check back in another time when you feel calmer, because that is the feedback sometimes I've gotten from people, is there's a lot of information. I try to really keep it simple, keep it easy to digest. So chances are, if you just watch it another time when you're feeling calmer, then it won't be so overwhelming. And I do also have just a 15-minute summary. So you can just watch the 15-minute summary to start, and then trust that at some point you will feel more curious and regulated and able to process a lot of information, and it'll be, a time that you can dive back into it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. My pleasure. And then, Shelby, thank you. She says, so good. Betsy's so good about creating a safe place of exploration. Yes, it's one of my very, very favorite things to do, is to hold that space for you guys and to have these little moments where, we're shifting emotions and we're like changing feelings in our body, and it's just the greatest thing. So my pleasure. All right, you guys. Thank you. Have a great rest of your evening. Check for there's one more workshop coming up, and then there's some coaching on Friday, which should be really fun too. And we could do some inner child work there too, if you're wanting that. So take care, you guys.